Season, it's expected by the National Disaster and Management Authority and DMA that about 10 million Kenyans are set to be affected, already actually bearing the brunt of what is witnessing the climate change related effects such as failed rains, and therefore drought is the conversation we are having this morning. And our guest is Baraka Bosire, who is the Deputy Director at the Pastoralist Girls Initiative of PGI. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me this morning.
Yes, and the most affected counties from data that we have are the arid and semi-arid counties. Maybe you can just paint a picture for us on how, for instance, the failed rains have affected the agricultural activities or, the lifestyle activities in those respective counties.
Thank you very much for that. We are having a serious drought situation in the country, especially in the Asal area. After having 5 consecutive failed rainy seasons, and the county is food insecure. There's a lot of malnutrition. One thing is at times we enjoy is the rain, but down, especially in Tana River and Garissa, there are floods. With the failed regions, there are no floods, and the communities around there use what we call receding water to cultivate food. So with the drought, no floods, then there is no production of food purely for the last 5 seasons. That is almost over the last 2 years.
Right.
So the communities are really suffering in terms of they don't have anything to eat, and there is a lot of challenges in pasture. Where there was some little rain in October, in some parts of the Asal counties, some did not experience, like Mandera, Turkana. So there is a lot of migration of livestock to the counties that received very little rain. I would give an example of Tana River, where we've seen an influx of camels, cows that have moved from Wajir to Mandera to Tana River, the small parts that had rain. And coming here, there is the challenge of water. And conflict that will be now resource-based, because the locals already have their own livestock, and there's other livestock coming in trailers offloaded in Tana River so that they could use the pasture there. So there is that serious food shortage. There is livestock migration and even displacement of populations to where there is pasture. There is migration of the population, especially in Tana River County, towards the Delta, where it's usually a bit greener. But Garissa, the situation is worse because the whole county was very much affected.
So this is the worst drought in 40 years. We've had 5 failed rainy seasons. How did we, why should we find ourselves here? I thought we should have learned from the first failed rainy season and probably put in place mitigation measures just in case that the rains fail. Then again, we don't have to find ourselves where we are. Why is enough not being done? Because I feel it's not being done to ensure that in case there is a failed rainy season, that communities don't fully really depend on the rainy seasons. Climate change is affecting the rain patterns in the world. So what is not being done to ensure that, in case there's a failed rainy season, then again, we don't have to talk about hunger and malnutrition, especially in arid and semi-arid counties?
I think that's a good question on what is not being done. And there are very many things that are not being done, especially in addressing the effects of climate change. As we know globally, the changing weather patterns are as a result of climate change. There is a lot of carbon emission that are happening. We are not addressing that as a country. We know that we are supposed to have enough food stock. We know the government for a very long time is not buying cereals. Farmers are not getting adequate support to produce in terms of inputs. Where they can, even where they're supposed to access water through irrigation, there are also challenges in even doing that, and a case would be the Hola and Bura irrigation schemes, where they are relying on the Tana River for agriculture. So one thing is our efforts in addressing climate change that is resulting to the erratic weather pattern has not been adequately addressed. Number two, we could talk about being strategic as a country, because it's the responsibility of the government to feed its people. But you realize that every other time the government is almost caught off guard. There is no enough food reserves that can be released in case of that, and it requires setting aside adequate budget that can easily be moved when in terms of emergency.
Yeah.
So I think in terms of having resources available, addressing the climate needs is one of the things that have not been done right.
Yeah, and apart from what the government should do or what the government has not do, what should the local communities and the local authorities do to, ensure that the communities are protected from the pangs of hunger?
I think the local communities also have a role in building their resilience. For example, I come from a pastoralist community where they believe in having a huge number of livestock, camel, goats, and cows. And you find that when there are warnings already that there will be a drought, and they can do an off-take program, sell the stock so that it doesn't die. Find that the community still sticks in terms of they can't sell their livestock. But like what we witnessed in the last drought, almost 40% of the livestock died because of the drought. There were carcasses littered everywhere. So the community would not want to mitigate against some of the effect like that. We also have this belief of maize as the only food, where it's supposed to be eaten. So you find that most of the community, especially in Tana River, where I come from, they still believe in cultivating maize. Maize demands for water, and the uptake of inputs is also huge. Yeah. And if there is no enough water, then they don't get rain. But there are food that they can have with the little water, like the last October-November rains. Those ones who planted green grams got, but those ones who went for maize did not get anything. So there are some of the cultural aspects and practices that communities have in terms of the food, or what they believe is food, and what the weather can support. So those changes needs to be taken into consideration. Yes,
so far 15 counties have been mapped out. They are at risk actually of suffering from the drought-related problems such as hunger, and it's estimated that 10 million Kenyans are going to be affected this year. So right now we are now having a conversation not about the long-term mitigation measures, but also about the emergency response, because hunger is here with us, drought is here with us, and people are suffering. So what sort of emergency response is required for such areas, and is it already happening? Do we have aid coming to the affected communities?
Thank you very much. Currently, there's a lot of support that is being done in most of the communities in the ASAL. Like I am aware that the ASAL humanitarian network, through support of international donors and organizations like Oxfam, ACTED, World American Jewish Relief, the European Union, have really tried to come in to mitigate against the effect of the drought, especially in terms of food security at the household level. Currently, there is a lot of cash transfer going into households where markets are functional, that they can be able to get cash and buy food where markets are functional. Where markets are not functional, there are organizations that are doing direct food distribution. I know, like in Marsabit, Church World Service is doing a lot of food distribution there directly to the community. But in most ASAL counties, then there is a cash transfer. There was also interventions in water, availability of water, because you'd find that where people have been given grains to cook, and they tell you, I don't have water to cook. So you find that the county government, most of the county governments have come in with what we call water tracking. And water tracking is availing water to the households to enable them cook their food and do other things, and also get water for their livestock. So there are both international organizations that have come in to address and mitigate against that through cash transfer, through WASH, through direct food distribution. And we also have local organizations and networks like the ASA Alimentarian Network, ASAL, RASIDA, organizations that are responding on the ground, trying to mitigate that. I also did not mention there are a lot of nutritional challenge and malnutrition. Some countries have severe malnutrition, where we have children that have to get their therapeutic support foods for them to regain. So I know the organizations like Concern that are doing that. We have IRC, that is the International Rescue Commission. We have the Norwegian Commission, Refugee Commission, that are doing some of these things at the local level to mitigate that. I know NDMA has a problem, has a program for also the same, that is the National Drought Mitigation Authority, in terms of water and the like. And the county governments, very little, but they are supporting, mostly in coordination.
Yeah, and do we have people in your own, because you're supporting Garissa and Tana River counties, right? So do we have people who've lost their lives because of hunger? And what is the level, because you also mentioned malnutrition and cases of especially pregnant women, breastfeeding women affected. Maybe you can paint for us a picture. Where are we as a country, or where you represent as far as the effects of hunger or drought is concerned? What are the numbers like?
Okay, for Garissa and Tana River, there are, for figures of people in need of food, currently they are close to 200,000. But children on malnutrition, there are around 3,000 for Tana River, I know, but acute malnutrition numbers are not very high. Especially in Garissa and Tana River. But I know counties that have very high figures of acute malnutrition in Mandera and Marsabit. So, like the Asal County, we are talking about 40% of the population in need of food aid. So, in Garissa and Tana River, we've not experienced any death as yet. But there are serious malnutrition challenges amongst children because you find that there is no food. There are far places, like when you find access to water, which is a very basic commodity. You find that there's what we call the staircase wells that the communities have dug to access water. And it takes 8 to 9 people passing each other water upstairs to go and give that water. That is for livestock first, before even for human consumption. So there is that scenario where water is not there. There is malnutrition, acute malnutrition in some areas. Go to a village, like one of the villages that I visited, all the children that you see there are malnourished. You'll see in the hair, you'll see in the skin, and you'll see in that. And they have not even received services because the gap of having to reach is also wide. The resources available cannot reach all the, let's say, the 3,400 something children in Tana River that are in need of nutritional support, and around close to 5,000 in Garissa. So it's a bad picture, especially when we look at the children and the women that are having to do that. So I know there are mental health issues that we have to deal with, where you find that men almost going mad because of the death of the livestock. because these are people who believe so much on livestock. So if you find that livestock, most 50 over 60% of your herd is gone, there are men that have almost run mad, walking, talking alone because of that. We have had incidences of violence because some men cannot feed their families, and they believe that it doesn't need a family. So it's like they want a divorce, and becomes a challenge. So it's serious. Also, there are children being affected. They're not going to school. They have had to migrate and the like. So that is the picture of the drought situation in Northeastern. No water, education being affected, violence, mental health issues, and people spending long hours in the staircase wells to just get a few liters of water that is for livestock. So that's what we can. So
let's finally talk about the solution to the drought that we experience every single year. And in every administration, we've seen government officials coming out and urging Kenyans to donate so that food can be availed to affected communities. Right now, yes, it's justifiable to respond, emergency response, because people are suffering. But come next year, for instance, we pray that we're not going to experience another failed rainy season. But just in case it happens, we do not want to find ourselves where we are right now. We do not want to see pictures of malnourished children, for instance, and breastfeeding mothers who cannot even breastfeed their children because they do not have enough milk. So let's talk about the solution to this, the long-term solutions to what we are going through. I know it's addressing climate change. So what can we do so that, I'll give you an example. Most homes, for instance, some homes, let me say, they have solar system. Just in case the electricity connectivity and the power is off, then they are safer with the solar system. So what can we do as a country to cushion, to protect ourselves, just in case there's a failed rainy season? Then we are not going to hear cases of hunger and people dying because of the effects of the drought.
So I think that's a good thing, because most responses are emergency. But apparently it seems when we are through with emergency, the mechanisms that needs to be put in place so that we are not find ourselves into that are not put into place. One of the things is, in terms of emergency, what do? We appeal for food. And when there is plenty of food, we find that the government cannot buy that, stock it, so that it can easily give it out. Because find that when there is plenty, there is a lot of wastage, there is a lot of politics when it comes to buying maize, stocking. If you walk across most of the cereal boards in the country, you'll find the stores are empty. Some of them have never been used for very many years. And the food security policy in the country needs to address that, especially in terms of increasing production. Increasing production means that the means of productions are available and at a cheaper level, at a cheaper price. Inputs, I'm talking about especially fertilizer. And we also need to move to mechanization in terms of doing production, large-scale production. We have not maximally used our resources for food production. I would give you an example like Tana River and Garissa, where we have the Tana River itself. There are two irrigation schemes, that is the Hola and Bura irrigation schemes, with a huge capacity to produce food. But I think it's operating at its bare minimum. I know the Hola irrigation scheme is coming up, the Bura irrigation is there, but with a lot of challenges in terms of supplying adequate water for the farmers to just produce food, which some of the community there are very hardworking. Once they get rain, they will produce enough food, but the challenge is there. So when we optimize production and when there is adequate harvest, the government can take in and have it in stock I know there are policies in terms of what amount of food should be available for the, what they call the strategic grain reserve. So if we maintain that and we revise the figures based on the challenges that we have, I believe we are not going to have that. Number two is the aspect of changing or shifting from rain-fed agriculture to irrigation. I believe in the long run, most of the time, like even when there are droughts, there are places where we've used technology, and at the heat of the drought, you would find women still with vegetables. And what are they using? It's just a drip kit irrigation system that is solar powered from a well, not even a borehole. So there are technologies that can be used to get food even during drought. So if all these are availed, then I believe then we are not going to be at emergency mode every other time.
All right, and thank you so much for your time. We have now to wrap it up the show. Baraka Bosire, Deputy Director, Pastoralist Girls Initiative. Thank you so much for your time. All right.